on, and you get the feeling it's air-conditioned. But Akhenaten changed this too. At Amarna, tomb walls no longer showed the deceased in the next world. Those scenes were replaced with pictures of Akhenaten and the royal family, often worshipping the Aten. If there was a next world, it seemed to revolve around Akhenaten. Along with this confusing vision of an afterlife is one of the greatest intellectual achievements of the ancient world. A poem written by Akhenaten himself.
Splendid you rise at dawn, living Aten, creator of life. When you have dawned in the east, you fill every land with your beauty. You are beauteous, great, radiant. When you set in the west, earth is in darkness as in death. Every lion comes from its den, all the serpents bite, night hovers, earth is silent, as their maker rests in darkness.
Religion wasn't the only thing Akhenaten changed. 1,000 years of art went out the window. Before Akhenaten, Egyptian art had hardly changed over the centuries. We're used to art styles changing practically every year. In Egypt, art was intended for eternity. Change was to be avoided. A statue of a pharaoh of 2500 BC is not radically different from one 2,000 years later. Akhenaten was the one spike on the curve. No more idealized muscular bodies. Akhenaten is shown warts and all. The slogan for the age of Akhenaten was living in truth. If the pharaoh was deformed, let it be shown that way. Not even the beautiful Nefertiti was exempt from the new policy of truth in art. The famous bust of Nefertiti is a symbol of beauty throughout the world. But as she matured, even she was portrayed with poor posture and an aging body. It became fashionable to show the entire royal family with elongated heads. Not only was the new art liberating for Akhenaten, it gave the artists who worked at Amarna a new freedom. Artists had a chance to express themselves as never before. New scenes of the royal family could be composed, with no worries about tradition. They were shown informally, kissing and touching, eating meals together. To look into the private life of a pharaoh was unheard of in ancient Egypt, but Akhenaten permitted it. It was like photographers being invited to film the Queen of England brushing her teeth. Growing up at Thebes, Akhenaten had never been shown with his family, never mentioned on monuments. Now, here at Amarna, he could come out of the closet and say, "Accept me for what I am." For the first time in his life, Akhenaten could be himself. In its finished state, Amarna offered a theatrical setting for celebrating Akhenaten's kingship. The city sprawled over the plain. There were palaces with banners streaming and statues of the Pharaoh. Suburbs housed the court officials who commuted to work on the royal road that ran through the center of town. Probably the widest street in the ancient world, it was designed for chariot processions, with Akhenaten leading the parade. The outcast boy had come a long way. Spanning the road, a bridge connected the palace with the temple area. Here, Akhenaten and Nefertiti appeared before the people, on the balcony known as the Window of Appearances, tossing down gold ornaments and other gifts to those he wanted to honor. At its height, the city grew to more than 10,000. There were boatmen, bureaucrats, traders, artisans, priests, and their families. They must have all been terribly excited with their new lives, new homes, new beginnings. It was like the age of Aquarius. Akhenaten was trying to create a utopia, but not everyone was happy. The Pharaoh reveled in the warmth of the sun, but some foreign envoys to his court went home with sunburns. A king of Assyria wrote to Akhenaten, "Why are my messengers kept standing out in the open sun? They will die in the open sun. If it does the king good to stand in the open sun, let him stand there and die in the open sun." They were like California sun worshippers. I always think of Akhenaten's court with permanent suntans.
This is where it all happened. Akhenaten actually walked this street, and one of his followers lived in this house. Akhenaten probably rewarded him with gifts of gold. He wanted his followers happy. You see, Akhenaten was a flower child of the 60s. He wanted everyone happy, everything beautiful, everyone loving everyone else. Unfortunately, the world doesn't work like that. Akhenaten had been isolated too long. He didn't understand people. He had created a beautiful, idealistic religion that was way ahead of its time. But the people just didn't get it.
They were used to gods they could see, carved in stone, gods with beautiful bodies of men and women, and heads of animals. Akhenaten's god, the Aten, was an abstraction. It was the basic principle of the universe, light. Akhenaten's subjects just couldn't understand this. This wasn't a god they could rely on in times of need. Besides, there was an elitism to the new religion that must have puzzled the would-be disk worshippers. The Aten never shed its rays on them, only on the royal family. The Aten was Akhenaten's own personal god, giving the king unbridled love and sustenance. Maybe it replaced the father who had pushed him into the background. It was Akhenaten and his family who worshipped the Aten. Everyone else had to make do with the light reflected from Akhenaten. It's almost as if the new religion came in two sizes, commoner size and king size. At his holy city in the desert, Akhenaten was far removed from the suffering he'd experienced as a child at Thebes. But he was also removed from reality. There was trouble in paradise. Egypt was dying. For more than 10 years, Akhenaten had lived in his beloved Amarna, with his thoughts focused on religion and his personal god, the Aten. But no one was minding the store. It was as if the President of the United States had moved the capital to Wyoming and started writing poetry. Egypt's once great army had grown weak. Foreign countries no longer sent tribute. From remote outposts in Syria and Lebanon, Egypt's foreign ambassadors wrote to the king that they were no longer respected. Letters written by one of his loyal princes, Ribadi, tells of the lack of respect for both Akhenaten and Ribadi. Writing from his fortified position, he pleaded,
"They have formed a conspiracy with one another, and thus I have great fear that there is no man to rescue me out of their hand. Like birds that lie in a net, so am I.
You have to remember how isolated Ribadi was. For Egyptian troops to reach him, they would have to march through Gaza, Canaan, into the Bekaa Valley of Syria, and then north. This was always hostile territory. Today, you can still see Crusader forts, built 2,000 years later, remnants of medieval battles fought there. This was where Ribadi was writing from. If the Egyptian army didn't save him, no one would. Ribadi repeatedly wrote, telling Akhenaten of Egyptians' weakening position and asking for troops. His last letter also went unanswered.
I cannot go out of the gate, and I have written to the palace, but thou hast not sent an answer. I have been wounded 9 times, and so have feared for my life.
Poor Ribadi wasn't alone. Other pleas came from Egypt's outposts, but they went unanswered. Egypt's domination of the Near East had slipped away, and Akhenaten didn't seem to know or care. Isolated from the problems of Egypt, and perhaps from reality, Akhenaten must have been truly happy with his new god, his new family, and his new city. But after 14 years of marriage, his beautiful wife and companion Nefertiti died. His other wife, Kia, had also died, so now he was without a woman at his side. Akhenaten had been raised among women, 4 sisters and his powerful mother, Queen Ti. Nefertiti had always been at his side, sharing his dreams. Kia, his beautiful minor wife, was also important to him. She even had her own temple. Now both wives were dead. Akhenaten was alone again. The great experiment in the desert was nearly over. In the 17th year of his reign, only in his 30s, Akhenaten died and disappears from history. Will we ever know what really happened at Amarna? Did Akhenaten really look like his statues? Many believe that the only way we will ever find out is if Akhenaten's mummy is